Okay, time for a couple of previews today. And first up is the San Jose Sharks, and San Jose is an interesting one. And San Jose is interesting because they average out to 100 points, mostly. 100, 99, 98, 89, and 111. Well, if you add 89 and 111, you get 200 divided by 2, 100. So San Jose is a remarkably consistent team if you do the kind of math that I just did. That's some creative math work for you kiddos. They've made the playoffs 3 straight years. They've made the playoffs 20 out of 27 years. Not bad considering they were an expansion team and they were a really bad expansion team at the beginning. But the history videos will get to that sometime next month. Um, this is the 4th year for DeBoer, and it is the umpteenth year for Doug Wilson as GM. And he's done a very good job of building a team that's good. Building a team that you could argue has been great at times. But have they been champions? No. So the question then becomes one of, did they do anything this summer to become champions? My answer to that would be no. However, they were in the Stanley Cup final a couple years ago, and I would argue not a whole lot has changed with the roster. So it's still there that they can do it again. What happened to these guys this year was they ran into a bit of what we could call the Vegas flu, and the teams against Vegas just couldn't beat them. Just didn't look like they were up to snuff against them. Now, San Jose gave Vegas far more difficulty than did the Kings. Jonathan Quick gave Vegas a difficult time. The entire Sharks team gave Vegas a much more difficult challenge in the second round. And I would argue that San Jose was the toughest challenge in the West. That Winnipeg, minus game one, didn't measure up against Vegas either. And so if you're a Sharks fan, you can kind of hang your hat on that, I think, that they were the best team in the West as a challenge to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, can they challenge Vegas this year? Absolutely. Can they get past Vegas? We'll see. Top 5 cap hits. Brent Burns is number 1. Mark-Edward Vlasic and Evander Kane are tied for 2. Couture and Pavelski are tied at 3. And, of course, Pavelski's an unrestricted free agent this coming summer. I would imagine that we'll hear about him signing an extension over the next couple of months. I can't see Pavelski being the guy who ends up becoming an unrestricted free agent. Jones and Hurdle round out the top 5 in cap hits, but of course that's top 7. And who's not there? Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton, I'm not even necessarily projecting into a top 6 position for them, and that's where it gets interesting. Is their identity is very slowly changing, and in doing it the way they're doing it, I think it's going to work out pretty well for them. But we'll see how that goes. Their plus player for me is Couture when Logan Couture's going. When he's in full warrior mode, he's fantastic. Their overall MVP is Brent Burns when Burns is on. Now, Burns had a down year by his standards defensively. Now, he's never been a stalwart on the blue line. He's never been a great shutdown defenseman, but he's been an excellent defenseman all around. And this past season, his defense lagged to the point where he was not in the Norris Trophy conversation. I thought there was a good 20-game period there where Burns was the best defenseman in the league, but it just doesn't add up. It's an 82-game schedule, and those 20 games notwithstanding, the other 62 games count. The only minus I could really come up with when I looked at this lineup is maybe Thornton's health. Joe Thornton missed a lot of time during the playoffs. It looked like he was taking his final lap as a San Jose Shark, probably in the entire NHL at 39, and now he comes back. And the speculation is he's back because they fell short in their pursuit of John Tavares. But I don't think Thornton's going to play a key part moving forward. I don't think he's going to be in their plans for a top 6 role at all. Who I have in the top 6, Kane, Pavelski, Hurdle, Meyer, Couture, and now Tierney. It's gonna be again, it's gonna be a battle, I think, for their spots in their roster. They have a solid enough 4-line team. Thornton can drop down to that 3rd line, and then we'll see what happens. But Thornton could also come into camp in great shape and play 1st line too, which would drop Pavelski down to probably wing for Couture. Like, there's a lot of moving parts with this roster, and I don't think we'll know exactly how things are going to look until the first preseason game and get an idea of who DeBoer is playing in which spot, because I think there's going to be some changes this year. Kind of has to be when you've got a team that hasn't got over that hump. You're trying to look for that magical combination that'll get you over the hump, like what Washington found this past spring. Top 4 defensemen, Burns, Vlasic, Braun, and then, I don't know, Joakim Ryan projects as probably being in here, but Dylan, you could argue that DeMello was brought back. DeMello could end up being... There's a lot of defensive depth here, and we'll see who ends up in the top 4. It'll probably end up being Ryan. This is probably true. Ryan could end up with Burns, Vlasic with Braun. We'll see what happens there. It's a tough team to really get a read on because there are so many players who could potentially play, and there are players that I know I'm not mentioning who could be top 6. I keep waiting for Jonas Donskoy to get a shot at a top 6 spot here. That guy's compete level's off the map. Goaltenders, Jones is the starter, Dell's the backup, and this is one of the better batteries in the NHL. For goaltending, I think they're set for years. That being said, Aaron Dell had a very solid season. We'll see if he can do it again. He does have the nicest mask in the league, though. Really is. Go look it up. It's kind of a fun thing, and it's a play on his name being Aaron Dell. Additions, Lucas Radill, who's 28, so he doesn't qualify as a rookie. Rookies, of course, are 26 and younger. And Vincent, and I'm gonna butcher this, Proplan, who is a Swiss player and got signed. They are the only 2 additions I could see that I think may push for a roster spot. Radill is 28 years of age. You don't sign a guy to come over who's 28 years of age not to play. So we'll see what happens there. Last 5 years playoffs, they lost in round 2 this year, as I said. They lost in round 1 the year before, and they were in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2016. They missed the playoffs in 2015, and they lost in round 1 in 2014. It's a very excellent regular season team that's trying to get over that hump in the playoffs again after they did a couple years ago. Potential rookies, Antti Suomela is the number 1 on the list for me. Maxim Latunov is number 2, and then the aforementioned Proplan that they signed, the Swiss kid. We'll see what happens with him and whether or not he's going to come in. Because again, when a guy comes in and he's in his mid-20s, I expect they're going to give him a shot at the roster. There's not much point in signing a guy who's 24 and older that you don't think is going to push for a roster spot or maybe play an opening night. Now, how did the channel see this going? The channel, 47% of you said San Jose is going to be first. 26.4% said second. 12.4% said third. 6.2% said fourth. 3.8% said fifth. 2.3% said sixth. 1% said seventh. 0.2% said eighth. So 2 out of 1,000 forgot that Vancouver's in the division. And that's definitely something that people have had trouble seeing. This team is not going to finish 8th, and they're not going to finish 7th. Their goaltending is too good, their defense is too solid, and their forward depth is intimidating. They're going to score their share of goals. A lot of it is going to come down to Burns. Which Brent Burns shows up this year? The Brent Burns who looked defensively lost for much of last year. The Brent Burns that you could almost argue, based on last year's performance, hey, why don't we just throw him back on the wing? It worked before. Burns is a winger. It worked at an NHL level before. He likes it better on the blue line. But notice, since he played wing, he's been a much better offensive defenseman. He apparently picked up some tricks as a forward, and he's used those to his advantage. They're one of those teams that it's kind of easy to overlook them. So if you're on the East Coast, you're probably going to be looking. And if you don't watch San Jose, and if you look at the numbers, you go, they'll probably be okay. But they're not going to win anything in the playoffs. And that's likely going to be the thought process a lot of people have. Now, where do I have them? Well, in this case, I think 47% of the channel is right. I have them in first. I think that when you look at this team, I think the Kings got older. Vegas overperformed as a first-year team, and I think we can agree on that. Edmonton's due for a bounce back, but Edmonton's not going to be the number 1 team in the division. Calgary, I think same on Calgary. There's a lot of teams that I'm a fan of in the division, but not necessarily a lot of teams that I look at and say they could take San Jose down. Of the 4 teams that I've picked to win the division, and again, I'm thinking now, have I revealed all of my picks? Well, I mean, I have Nashville in second, so it's Winnipeg in first. Spoiler alert. So I'd put them below Winnipeg. I'd put them below Pittsburgh. And in the Atlantic, I'm not revealing yet, but I'd put them below that team. But again, part of the reason that they got to the finals in 2016 when they were a team of 98 points, 2 points less than what they had last year, is that nobody took them all that seriously. And there was no pressure. This is a team that won't face any pressure. Even in the playoffs, I really don't think San Jose will face any pressure this year. Because of losing to Vegas. Because of the fact they've been lingering around the 100-point mark, lingering around being a pretty good team, not fantastic. I don't foresee people looking at San Jose and saying, now you got to win it this year or else, because there are still young guys in the lineup. This is a team that could very well, once Thornton retires, maybe Pavelski starts falling off, Burns, whatever, there seems to be enough youth in San Jose. And what I'm going to say about Doug Wilson, that I understand people wanted more done with San Jose in the offseason, and that Doug Wilson may be seen as a guy who didn't get it done. And that's fine. And I'm sure he would accept that criticism and you know, and take it smiling. But at the same time, while other teams in the league, faced with an aging Joe Thornton and a core that you could look at and say hasn't quite got the job done, they might panic, they might tear it apart, they might do a retool, a rebuild, there's been no panic in San Jose. There's no panic in the way that Doug Wilson runs this team. And I don't think there should be any panic for San Jose fans as of yet, because it's been remarkably consistent the last 3 years. Despite injuries to key players, despite Burns falling back to earth this past year, and he can play better, they still, points-wise, ended up in the same spot. So there's a lot, if you're a Sharks fan, to look at and say, we've got our chance. Because they do. They absolutely do. And I say that as somebody who does not cheer for San Jose, but absolutely, San Jose, they're a dark horse this year. And we'll see what happens with them. So, there you go. My Sharks preview. Let me know what I forgot in the comment section below, as always. And, hey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you just happen to come upon this video. And, yes, I'm doing all these in alphabetical order. And, yeah, I appreciate you guys, all your support. Thank you very much for that. And let me know all of your thoughts. And there you go, Harrison. I got your team done. I'll talk to you guys again soon.